Right now, there is no incentives for media organizations or the platforms to really change the way they're doing business. Algorithms tend to be developed such that it pushes data and information to you that companies know you want to see, or they think you want to see, or it will help the bottom line for them. It's just too easy to make money delivering information the way we do it now.
Today I have got a really special guest. Ellen McCarthy is here. During her career, she's been a force in the national security world and someone who spent her career leading at the highest level. Ellen served as Assistant Secretary of State for Intelligence and Research, and now she's pouring her heart and energy into the civic innovation and mentorship through Trust in Media Corporation. Ellen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's so good to be here.
I know you're busy. You just came to Austin, and thank you for spending some time and coming here.
I love Austin. It's one of my favorite places. I love the spirit. I love the innovation. I think it's got a lot of characteristics of other towns without the snarkiness. I love it.
Ellen, everybody has a story. I believe that. Mm-hmm. And I told you off camera, but what is your story? What made you to go to intelligence? And I'm sure you got a story that dragged you to that world. What is it?
Do you remember Sean Connery?
Yes, of course.
So I would love to say that I was born just dying to become an intelligence analyst, but it really was Sean Connery. The Hunt for Red October had just come out. I thought he was so hot. I mean, I just thought he was the coolest thing ever. At the time, I was a reporter for a local newspaper in Annapolis, Maryland, and I was given the opportunity to go to the Office of Naval Intelligence as a submarine analyst, and Sean Connery. I just thought, well, this will be fun, and what he's doing is pretty cool. So literally started working at the Office of Naval Intelligence, thinking I'll do this for a couple of years. My real goal in life was to own a golden retriever and a sailboat and live on the Chesapeake Bay in Annapolis. And while I have the golden retriever, and I didn't marry Sean Connery, but I did marry a submarine officer, it kind of all worked out.
What was your experience during that intelligence actually that sparked the idea for building the trust in media? Because you had some idea and you said, okay, I done my thing. Now I want to go the civic work.
My story began not with this incredible desire to work in the intelligence community, but I'll tell you that the minute I started at the Office of Naval Intelligence, there was no question I was never going to go back. I was never going to live on the Chesapeake Bay and have this possibly wonderful life, because it becomes a passion, a vocation. But it wasn't just intelligence. I mentioned that I started as a reporter, and I really now realize that for me, what drove me was delivering information to people in a way that could help them make decisions. In the intelligence community, we call intelligence's job is to deliver decision advantage. Much like for reporters and journalists, it's about delivering information that help people make decisions. And so I realize now that what motivated me from the very beginning was really about gathering information that people can use to lead their lives, lead a country, drive a submarine, figure out what door to knock down. And so that's really, that was my passion. And so I started as a reporter and moved to naval intelligence, would then spend 30 some years working across the intelligence community. There's 18 agencies in the U.S. intelligence community. I think I've worked for or with almost all of them. And something I noticed from the days of Sean Connery to where we are today is that information is not as integrated in decision-making as it once was. I actually read a book put out by the RAND Corporation just after I was left State Department. I read this book by Jennifer Kavanaugh and Michael Rich called Truth Decay, The Absence of Facts in American Decision-Making. And I read this book, and it really struck me that we now have more information as humans than we ever have before, but its usefulness to us, its usefulness in terms of helping us make decisions, is far less now than it was when I started back in the days of Sean Connery.
Information is all about how we're going to interpret that. You gather information, and you hand it over, and how we're going to interpret that, it's up to us, and what decision we're going to make based on this decision. Even in the entrepreneurship and in the leadership, especially in the leadership, how important is trust in information when you have a leadership position? Like if you're a leader and somebody hand you the information, you got to trust that information.
100%. So again, I started during the Cold War. Soviet Union was the US's biggest focus. During those days, the intelligence that we collected was pretty much the only data in town for the kinds of things that we had to, the kinds of decisions that warfighters had to make at that time. There was no open source information. We were very trusted, and we also had that relationship. The information was trusted because the submarine officer or the policymaker knew when we put together an assessment that was based on solid sources, that it was verified, that they understood the analytic technique that we used to develop this particular assessment, and they trusted us. That has changed a lot in the last 40 years. And I think it's because there's so much more data out there. And your point about trust is just so incredibly important that, if we're providing now an assessment and there is other sources of information that provide different positions, but it comes from trusted sources, the ability of intelligence to provide decision advantage now becomes far more challenging. And so this is a long way of saying that there has to be trust between the leader and their workforce or their customer if you ever intend to move the needle forward.
The data, I'm so happy that you mentioned that data is being diluted with so much unreliable news, like the rise of the AI. We really don't know who we're going to trust, who we can't trust. It's just what is real, what is not real. Are we going to trust the source? Are we going to trust, what is out there and what is happening between the source and when it's going to go out there? Those days, I think that you were many years ago, we weren't that advanced in technology and data migration and data analytics and all that. Now it's very challenging, don't you think?
Well, I know so. Again, I when I left government, when I left the State Department, I was really surprised at how often an intelligence assessment would be provided to a policymaker, but they didn't use it. They didn't want it because it didn't comport with the policies that they were trying to move ahead. And there was so much other data sources that did comport with their policy. So they just tended to lean on those sources. And it kind of gets back to, and by the way, I'm not political at all.
Not at all.
It's just human.
Exactly.
So right now we have so much data that we have to work with, whether you are the President of the United States, you're a business owner, you're a stay-at-home mom. There's so much data that you have to sort of drive through to figure out what's going on, whether it's where do I take my child to the dentist, what sports do I sign my kids up for, I'm worried about my brand. I want the president to understand what's going on in Iran. There's just so much data.
And now with the massive experience in the government and intelligence and what you have done, now you're pivoting into the entrepreneurship. You're an entrepreneur and you're pivoting into that. It's totally different world.
Oof.
It's totally different world. How did you pivot, and was it easy, or you said, what did I do?
This decision, most people when they leave government, most people when they leave the intelligence community after a career, they tend to move on to work in large companies, or they'll sit on boards, or they'll do some consulting. And for whatever reason, I thought I'm going to start this nonprofit, this thing called Trust in Media.
I love the name.
It's we're an organization of roughly 3,000 organizations and individuals from the technology sector, academia, media, other nonprofits, all with a focus on empowering people, giving people agency to demand quality information. So it's not fighting mis and disinformation through fact-checking and content moderating. It's really about raising awareness and providing folks with the tools and understanding of what is quality information. How do you navigate through this incredibly muddy information ecosystem? I've got to tell you that I think much like my decision to go into intelligence, that was my decision to start a nonprofit. It really was not based on enough analysis and research. I just thought I'll start a nonprofit. I'd run one before. I'd run the Intelligence and National Security Alliance. I'd run a for-profit company that it was a subsidiary to a nonprofit, and I thought, I can do this. This is the hardest thing I've ever done, ever done.
What was the hardest part?
I think I realized that there are those people who thrive with process, and there's those people who thrive with outcome. And I'm an outcome-driven person, but process is very important. And when you don't thrive in process, you have a difficult time establishing processes, establishing focus. And I really had to surround myself with people who were much better at establishing frameworks and process and strategies and goals, and sort of keep me in my lanes and focused.
And especially right now, you are standing the other side of the fence. You are now a user of the information, even though you're trying to make it better and send something out that is worth listening or reading. How you feel that now you are a user rather than you were just analyst. Now you said, oh, what people they were thinking about us now, because you're on the other side of the fence right now.
Totally. And so, another thing is when you're setting up an organization that's talking about trusting information, that's a pretty volatile topic right now. It's not, we use the analogy that we are trying to create an ecosystem like we have with food right now. So when you purchase food or when you order food at a restaurant, you know what the ingredients are. And so our vision is that in the information ecosystem, people should have the same understanding about information. Not whether it's right or wrong, you get to figure that out, but what are the ingredients in that information? What is the provenance? What is the sourcing? What is the timeliness? What is the credibility? A basic understanding for what makes up that piece of information. What are the data elements in it? And then you decide whether or not you want to use that or not. Makes perfect sense to me, but in a very highly polarized world, you have to be very careful about the words you use and your focus. If fact checking and content moderating is not a particularly safe business to be in. People, very rightfully so, don't like other people fact-checking or content moderating for them. And we live in a society, we have a constitution, we're right to free speech, and I completely cherish those rights and privileges for living in this country, and that's not what Tim is all about. Tim is merely about giving people an understanding for what information they're consuming and then letting them make decisions.
Because we make decisions based on those information.
Right.
As an entrepreneur, as a business owner, we read information every day, and sometimes we have to pivot. For example, with the rise of AI, all these companies, most of the companies, they say we have two options: use it or lose it.
Right.
And they have to pivot based on what? Based on the information that they receive. How healthy those informations are, that's a different story.
Right. Part of the reason why we are where we are right now in this incredibly muddy and messy information ecosystem is because of business. Right now there is no incentives for media organizations or the platforms to really change the way they're doing business right now. So right now algorithms tend to be developed such that it pushes data and information to you that companies know you want to see, or they think you want to see, or it will help the bottom line for them. So there's algorithmic distortion. There's an environment where people who are have deep political views or ideological views or just want to make money, they take advantage of this ecosystem. So my point in all this is that there is not a business model that incentivizes organizations to help you navigate the information ecosystem, not in a way that's easily scalable. There's plenty of organizations out there right now that are developing quality information and have great tools and resources to help you identify deep fakes, or when somebody's calling you on the phone to be able to identify if this is a scam or not. But it's very difficult to scale all of those, because we work in a world where it's just easier to make money the way we're doing it right now. I liken it to the late 1800s, the era of yellow journalism. It's exactly that time again, where it's just too easy to make money delivering information the way we do it now. And so what is the incentive to change? And that's part of what we're trying to do at Trust.
And how are you going to differentiate yourself? I really like what you said, that is you can make money, but how we're going to differentiate ourselves as a company, as a business, as a person, as a nonprofit, that, we do something right.
Part of our hypothesis is that there is this market out there, that there is this segment of the market where there are people and organizations that want quality information. You've talked about business and your viewers.
Absolutely.
Business people, I think, probably more than any other sector right now, depend on quality information. And so it's how do you incentivize business to invest in capabilities that will guarantee they're getting quality information.
When the data is not healthy, how are you going to do analysis on the data? But if those are diluted, the source is not trustworthy,
right,
how are you going to make decision and go forward, especially today when you're going to build a business? Well,
given that we are so polarized right now, that and it's not just the United States, it's the world. So we trust nothing. There's organizations out there like Edelman. They produce the Trust Barometer. It's a huge advertising company in Canada, but the Trust Barometer, incredible measure of trust in organizations, to include business and religion and government, and they look globally at where trust is. Pew, Gallup, these are all organizations that for years have been looking at trust. And for the last 75 years, trust has been declining in just about every sector, with one exception, and that is local, and it's mostly local business. So I think it's very telling that right now, the expectation that somebody's going to come in and fix the ecosystem for us is just not going to work because we don't trust anything. So the whole focus of Tim really is about people have to have agency. We need to be more informed consumers, and we need to have the tools and resources that help us become more informed consumers. And it's just not media literacy. It's a combination of media literacy and transparency in our data, and then tools that will help us get the data we want quickly. Because we know right now that that's one of the most important standards to quality information is speed.
How do you think the media, they're going to gain the trust, or how media, they're going to create that trust? It's very challenging right now.
It is, especially since I'm not sure, the media sector is not, it's definitely wider than it's ever been before. It used to be Dan Rather and traditional media,
exactly,
and the New York Times and the Texas Tribune, and then social media entered the scene, and now it's YouTube and TikTok and Reddit. But it's even gone beyond that now. Now it can be podcasters, or anyone who writes a blog, or anyone who writes an email, or a social media influencer. They can now be part of the media sphere. The reality is that everybody's media everybody is media right now. So, that's again, I use the example of the 1890s and yellow journalism. What really changed in the 1890s was we actually implemented journalistic standards, and we had more training of journalists. And so that's where the Walter Cronkites and the Dan Rathers came from. But in this environment, what's the point of having a journalistic standard if nobody's reading the New York Times? And so it's a bigger challenge now, and it's one where people so consumers need to be much better consumers of information than they ever been before. And that's very difficult right now when we are overwhelmed with information. We either shut down, or we just believe whatever is given to us, or we think that what we're getting is already quality. And so what do you do in that environment? And that's something that we're really struggling with. And part of our strategy really is to start hitting local markets. Let's go local. So if trust exists in the local business level, let's start going to local communities, and let's start having the discussions like we're having today. And let's run some pilot projects and see if people can see what's in their data, will they make different choices? And so that's our next step.
You have talked to so many leaders. I know during building the trust in media, you get feedback. What other leaders are thinking? Like, are they on the same page as you are?
I've got to tell you, we have an incredible network and trust in media. I have 4-star military officers. I have former media personnel on our advisory board. Chuck Todd just started as a media advisor. Marcus Broccoli. We have big tech companies. Like everybody, our methodology is something that we have broad support for amongst very senior folks. In fact, we're hosting an event here in another couple of months, bringing some of those folks together to talk a little bit more about the business model for quality information. And we have broad support for our approach, but again, it really gets down to what's the business model for this? What's the revenue model for this? How we're a nonprofit. If we were a for-profit and we had a couple of tools, there'd be some opportunity for some investment. But as a nonprofit, it's how do you donate to this and what do you get out of that donation?
Is that very hard to explain to the mass that why you're giving money to us? I'm
getting better at it. But again, one of those things that's hard about starting a nonprofit. But yeah, it is. It's this is such a big issue. And I'm sure some of your listeners and viewers have the same challenge. How do you explain this in a way that motivates people to want to be a part of this or want to contribute to this?
Because most of us, we ignore the information that we get every day. And I say, okay, this is another news. But we're really not focusing on that because we make, as you said earlier, we make a lots of our decision based on the information we receive. Me personally, I read and listen every day, and I have to analyze that. Is it right? Is it true? If it's true, what I have to do, what I have to change. Should I pivot? Should I stay? Should I go? Most of the people, they go with the flow. What's happening is like a herd. Let's all go that way. But I think that's going to change very soon.
I keep saying the time is ripe, that it's, you look what's going on right now in Los Angeles, for example, with all the protests. That's an incredible example of how information is being manipulated to drive violence. And it's not just in Los Angeles, it's in Gaza. It is everywhere. And I really thought that we would have reached this precipice 5 years ago, but we haven't. But I think it's very soon that much like the 1890s, where people said, wait. We went into the Spanish-American War, and I had no idea why we were doing this. I think we're getting very close to that time.
As a female entrepreneur, and as a woman that most of us, we not ignore, should I say, is just, we say, oh, she's a female, she's running a nonprofit. Have you ever had those challenges? Like, because we are dominated by men, unfortunately.
Right.
But did you have any challenges running an organization as a female entrepreneur?
It's so fun. So I spent over 30 years working in the Defense Department and in the law enforcement community, and then at State Department.
That was another story.
Many times I was the only woman in the room. I've got to tell you, I don't think I realized. So little things that I never realized, things like, if we were in a group of men and they wouldn't look at me when we spoke, or if I was in a meeting and I said something and then somebody else said the exact same thing and they got feedback for it.
Is that right?
Oh my gosh, that happened all the time. I always thought that it was because I wasn't smart enough. I hadn't studied enough. I needed to work harder. It was very late in my career that I realized, wait, that's not what this was about. It wasn't that I wasn't smart enough or wasn't prepared. It was just the dynamics of working as a woman in a male-dominated world. And again, it happened later in my career where I came to that realization, and I was able to adjust and employ a few techniques to fix that. But what I also learned was the value of surrounding myself with some other women as mentors to help me with this. So I guess is a long way of saying I've been very blessed with wonderful male bosses and colleagues, but especially later in my career, it was the women that sort of helped me make that leap. Now, as I start a nonprofit, I feel like I'm coming at this, with that awareness and realization that I may not have had in government. And so I'm not facing those challenges right now. Maybe it's because I'm old. Maybe it's because I don't care. But I do care, but I don't care about that dynamic anymore. I think I'm good. So.
But do you think it still exists?
I definitely think it still exists. Just look at the data. You look at VCs and investment in women-owned businesses, and that the angel investment. You just look at the investment community, and the data that shows that women-started businesses almost always are your best investment, and yet they're not invested in. So why is that? Now that I'm talking to you, maybe I'm thinking out loud. Maybe that is part of the challenge right now. Could be. And
why you think it exists is because of the men's perception of women, or just this is what society has built over time and time?
Again, I think it is what society has built time over time. Again, I remember one boss when I was in government asked me why it was that everybody looked like him and not as many people looked like me, or me and then me with color, or me with a different background. Why is that? And for the longest time, I thought it was. And these certainly were factors. It was opportunity. There was a whole host of things. But then one of the factors that I think really struck me was it's about our comfort level. And so, that the reality is you surround yourself as a leader with people who help you. You're comfortable with those folks. Diversity is a very tough thing. I think that it's hard to manage through diversity, but I think it's incredibly important to manage through diversity. And so I'm a little different in that regard. I tend to surround myself with people who think differently than I do, come from different places than I do. Sometimes we drive each other crazy, but we're always better for it.
You surround yourself with the people that are smarter than you, they know better than you, and
they think differently than me.
They think differently than you, and it's very rare the leaders or entrepreneurs, they think like that. And I believe that's the key to success. I am not perfect.
I know it's
You're
the
not
key.
perfect.
No, but I know it's the key to success because
Why?
I have a lifetime of working in government where I've employed that tactic and have never failed. It's not easy. Managing through diversity is not easy because people are motivated by different things. They have different backgrounds. They have a different language, but it's worth the effort. And it's always worth the effort. There's never been one time that I've been sorry for not having employed that tactic. So I'm not going to stop doing that.
Then based on that, you're open to feedback and criticism, right?
Feedback is a gift. Again, so this is where the intelligence community was a great place to grow up because there's very few intelligence successes. There's lots of intelligence failures. And so if you cannot take comments on a written product or feedback during a briefing, if you are easily put out by critical feedback, then that's not the business for you. But that's where you learn, and that's where you know to put your focus. Risk analysis is the best. Understanding risks in any business is how you succeed. And it's the same thing in the intelligence community.
Have you ever got to the point that in your past career that you said, that's enough, I'm done? You went through that situation?
Oh my gosh, yes. I have to.
I'm saying that because a lot of us, we giving up as entrepreneurs. Yes. You get to the point that you said, I'm done. I can't scale it. I can't go forward. The economy, the culture, whatever it is, we're going to give up. I'm sure you were in the situation and say, that's it. I'm done. I see it. They don't see it. I feel it. They don't feel it. And I want to go.
I'm there right now sometimes. Yeah, it's lonely. It's yes. There's definitely days.
Thanks for admitting it.
Yes, no question. But again, this is where surrounding yourself with people who are smarter than you, but also people you trust. And it's those advisors who will say to you, nope, you're right, it's time to stop, or nope, put your big curl pants on, Ellen, let's just keep going. And so that's what I would advise businesses that are saying, when do I decide to stop? And, sometimes it is a good time to stop or pivot or start something new. So it's not about, quitting isn't always bad. But I think, surrounding yourself with data and advisors that will sort of help you make those decisions is critically important.
But your past career, is it really helping you a lot in this nonprofit trust in media?
Oh, so,
because you gained something that you implemented right now.
So it's actually that my background as a reporter and an intelligence analyst and having run intelligence organizations is exactly, when I was leaving government, I thought, who's providing decision advantage for the American people, for the world? Who's doing that right now? Who's helping people decide, where do I get the best price on eggs? Should I get vaccinated? Should I pursue this career path? Who's providing that? It used to be the media sector used to do that, but nobody's doing that right now. And so, the skills and the tradecraft that I acquired through my time in government, I think are very easily transferable to the private sector. So this concept of giving people an understanding to not just trust one source, to look at the timeliness of something, to verify something before you share it. These are all things that you do as an intelligence analyst, and now people need to do in the private sector. So I think I'm one of the best people to promote this.
Trust in media, a source that you can trust. That's a great tagline.
It really is. And trust is where it all begins. And trust is not data. Trust is people. Trust is that human connection.
Let's talk about that, because I'm so happy that you mentioned that, because I'm a people person, and it's very hard to build that trust. It's a two-way road. And trusting in the data, okay, that's good. You read it, you listen to it. But when you and I, we have that, we just met.
Right.
How we're going to build that trust? People, they're going to build trust based on what? What you say, what you tell me, based on your experience, based on your goals, your missions. How people these days, with this all information out there, they can trust the person. I said, Ellen, welcome to my circle. I can trust you.
Again, I look back at my time in government really was what further cemented for me this concept of how important trust is. And the reason was, when I ran the Bureau of Intelligence and Research at State Department, it's one of the smallest intelligence organizations in the USIC. So by comparison, its counterpart organizations are the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, and the Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA. Very large intelligence organizations, 15,000 or more people. And their business model is they write up intelligence and they hit the send button and it gets sent out, and people can use it if they want to use it, and people cannot use it if they don't want to use it. At INR, we're a small office that sits inside the State Department. And our analysts visit with the ambassadors. They sit with the policymakers. They meet with the secretary. There's fewer than 300 people in INR, and they do that every day. And as a result, they've created a relationship with the Secretary of State, or with the ambassador to Kenya, or the head of the East Asia Bureau. They've got those relationships, and they love their job. And the consumers of their intelligence trust them because they have that personal connection. That doesn't necessarily exist in some of the other agencies, where you just hit send, you send out a product, and then you don't know whether or not it was ever used or valued. The analysts at INR tend to stay. They die at their desks because self-actualization comes from knowing that they're helping people. Whereas that's not necessarily the same data statistic for some of the other intel agencies. So it really struck me that being small, having that connection, really is where it all begins. And I referenced local a number of times. And the reality is that the data shows that people tend to trust their local businesses, their local community leaders, their school boards, much more so than we do the federal government as an example. And why is that? It's because we have that connection. Yet we also live in a time when local media is dying. And it's actually sad. Something like 70% of our country is a local news desert right now. And some of the data points that really resonate with me is in communities where there's no local news source, people are far more easily recruited to extremist views. And the towns don't do as well financially, so towns have a tougher time securing bonds or getting loans. And so it's a couple steps back for people who live in those communities because there's no local information. And yet we already know that people will trust somebody, they will listen to somebody over somebody they don't know. Social media influencers are so impactful for that reason, because there's a level of trust between the readers and the producers of social media in that world. We really need to look at rebuilding our local information, or recreating our local information hubs, because that's where trust resides. And it really gets to because of connections with people.
I think we should go back, as you had mentioned, and I said it, that we got to go back to one-on-one, people to people, that you go actually to the source, you actually pour your heart, and then you talk challenges, solution, whatever it is. Everybody going that way for the AI, artificial intelligence, that deep figure. I think we have to go back a little bit. And I promise you, we will recognize that very soon, that, okay, we got this, but what is the reality? The reality is what Alan and I, we're doing, we're talking and sitting, which is you can penetrate the local people and say, hey, let's get together.
I agree. I think it's a yes and, though, because I think that in a world where most of our data is going to be synthetically produced here very soon, there's some estimates by Amazon that something like 60% of the internet, 60 or 70%, some crazy number in the next couple of years will be synthetically generated information, so AI generated information. That we have to be more transparent in our data sources. People have to know, just like with food, what is in their information.
Have that label.
They have to have that label. There has to be something that says, this is where it came from, this is the timeliness, this is the credibility, this is the completeness. We have to have that. And I think, to your point, that we need to recreate those connections, and that's where I think the creation of local information ecosystems is incredibly important.
Because in your case, how you going to raise money? You have to get with people.
Right.
You have basically what you're doing. You created a movement, and I feel that you're creating a movement with Trust in Media. You're creating something that people said, "Wow, that exists."
Yes.
Therefore, it's going to be requires that you get actually with people, travel,
right,
and go and meet face to face. This is about Trust in Media. This is what we do. Would you be able to help us?
I need to highlight, and I haven't mentioned this yet, but it's something I really want to emphasize. This is a national security issue. One of the reasons I'm doing this, and I probably should have highlighted this earlier, is that we're getting taken advantage of. It's not just by people inside our country benefiting financially. It's not just the tech platforms and the advertisers. It's not just that. It's that our ecosystem is being taken advantage of, and we're being taken advantage of, and that should drive us crazy. And, it's outside countries, it's outside players, and it's not just in the United States. Again, this is a global issue, and that should make you mad. And that should actually drive you to be a better consumer, not a better consumer. That's not a tagline. A more informed consumer.
More informed.
That you need to do that.
Because information is everything. We make decisions. We said it many times in this, podcast, that information is everything. We make decisions every day based on information we receive. Believe it or not, good or bad, we do it every day.
I've used the word in the past. I'm not sure I like it, but I'll say, but we also have to democratize it. So the reality is that there is quality information out there.
Absolutely.
If you're a business owner, you probably work with the Wall Street Journal or the Dow, or there's plenty of trusted data sites that will help you do your business. The banking community has the same thing. But in order to get to quality information, you have to pay for it. It's almost all of it is hidden, and it's because and by the way, it's not because these are bad organizations that are doing this. It's the only way they can make money, but you can't scale that. So not everybody can afford the Wall Street Journal or the Dow, or not everybody can afford All Sides Media or Tangle. And these are some incredible news sites. But how do we democratize it? How do we make it such that everyone has access to quality information?
That's what Trust in Media stands for.
Exactly.
And how people, they can help Trust in Media. If you have a message for them, how they can get involved, or how they can help you, because what you do is really priceless, honestly. And, that's going to change a lot of stuff if we get enough people to understand it, because education is a big part of what you do.
Education is a critical part.
It's a critical part of what you do, and it's going to push us forward when we educate people. You connecting with them, and then now you got to educate them, and your offer will be, this is what we're going to offer you.
And we're partnered with some incredible organizations that are focused on educating, media education. The National Association for Media Literacy and Education is one of them. So I would suggest that you contact me at my website. So it's timcoop.org. Where please drop me a note. Love to connect with you, hear how we might get you involved.
Do you have any advice for female entrepreneurs that are out there, they're going to start their own business, profit or non-profit? What advice do you have for them?
What advice do I have for other women? I'd say do it. And here's why. I think we hold ourselves back. You're a working mother, you are taking care, you're involved in elder care, you're just starting out, and there's this view that I can't, we hold ourselves back. We come up with all the reasons why we can't do this. And what I have found is that there are so many resources out there and organizations and people that will help you. And so, of course, you can follow a path where you're working for a company and you're making money, but you're not happy. But there is this other path that seems a little scary, but there's so many resources out there. And I already know that you're helping people with identifying those resources. So I would say just do it and surround yourself with some folks that will help you along the way because they're there.
I love it. Thank you so much, Ellen, for your time being here. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed our conversation. I learned so much.
Thank you. This is awesome.
Thank you.